This is the sixth in a series of Jewish joke videos. I have jokes spread throughout the other videos, like Hamantash and Laki debate and Passover jokes. But this one is going to focus on stories or jokes that teach something about the Jewish community. So, first one. It's called the Balagullah, the wagon driver. So, they go back now 150 years to the shtetl world of Europe. The itinerant rabbi would go from town to town and teach. And he was driven by the same wagon driver for many decades. The wagon driver once said to him, "Rabbi, we're coming to a new town. You've never taught it before. They don't know who we are. You know, I've listened to your speeches for so long. I'm sure I could give it just as well as you could. And they always treat you so well, and I get treated like such a schlep. Can we change clothes and let me pretend to be the rabbi in this one town, this one time?" The rabbi smiled and said, "Sure." So they switched clothes, and the rabbi's driving the wagon driver's sitting in the back like the rabbi. They get to the town is so excited to see the rabbi. So they have a big dinner, and he's seated at the front table, and they're fawning over him, and then comes time for the speech. Now, the wagon driver has memorized a lot of speeches of the rabbi, so he gives one beautifully. Then comes time for the questions, and the first question he handles well because he's heard the answer before. Second question, though, it completely stumps him. He has no idea. So he thinks for a minute, he looks over the rabbi, there's no help, he's smiling at him. And the wagon driver says, "You know what? That one is so easy, even my wagon driver could answer it." So they all turn to the wagon driver, the rabbi, and gets off the hook. Second joke. And I just told this one on my video about parochial schools, but it tells you about the challenges we face with continuing Jewish education for teenagers. Three rabbis are having a discussion about the problems they have with bats in their building. First one says, you know, the problem is so bad, we finally got an exterminator and he was able to get rid of them, but they've come back. Third one said, you know, the problem was so bad we couldn't get rid of them at all, we finally had to sell the building. Third one said, you know, I had no problem at all. They say, what do you mean you had no problem at all? Well, we gave them all bar mitzvah and then we never saw them again. Next joke. So I picture President of the United States and somebody you really don't like, and a rabbi and somebody else, and they're on an airplane, and the captain says, "Listen, folks, we got a big problem here. The engines have all died. The plane's going to go down and crash. And the worst news is I'm short one parachute. And I'm taking it." So he grabs a parachute and jumps out of the plane. So that leaves four other guys, including the rabbi. Now, just whatever bad person you want to pick that you don't like, then he says, you know what? I'm such a famous person. I'm so important to the world. I can't die. I've got to be saved. I'm taking one of the parachutes, grabs a parachute, jumps out of the plane. And then finally, basically, the joke is you're left with two guys, the rabbi and you. And the fellow says, you know, Rabbi, I don't know what to do. There's only one parachute left. Who's going to pick it? Rabbi says, don't worry. There's two parachutes left. The guy who's bad, the bad guy, whatever you identify him with, he took my tallis bag by mistake. Now, a tallis bag, for those who don't know, is a bag which can be pretty good size, which you hold your prayer shawl in. So anyway, that's a little joke about for people who know what tallis bags are, and kind of you can pick one person that you want to make fun of in that joke. And it's usually been the target of somebody who's got enmity for the Jewish people. Now here's a joke that goes back to the early civil rights days. So you think about a southern base, and a lady calls up, a sergeant at the base, and says, "Sergeant, I want to have a group of soldiers over for Thanksgiving, 4 soldiers, but please make sure no Jews." So the sergeant says, "Ma'am, I'll make sure there's no Jews." So comes Thanksgiving evening, the doorbell rings, and 4 big African-American soldiers are standing there. The lady says, you know, she turns bright red, and she goes, "Oh, there must be some mistake." And the first soldier in the front says, "Ma'am, Sergeant Goldstein never makes a mistake." In this day when we've got an African-American president and we're talking about black-Jewish coalitions again, kind of interesting joke to tell about the origins of the civil rights movement and the black and Jewish community coming together. Now here's a joke that's not specifically Jewish, but it's got a Jewish flavor to it. A fella is getting rid of his suits. He's had them for decades, giving the goodwill, so he goes to the pockets. And in the pocket of one suit he hasn't worn in decades, he finds a shoe repair slip. Now he's living in Baltimore, shoe repairs from the days he lived in Brooklyn before he got into World War II. And he thinks back from it and he goes, you know what? Those were my favorite pair of shoes. Those are those brown shoes with tassels, loafers. And I brought them in right before I went to the war and I forgot all about it. You know what? I love those shoes. And I'm going to New York on business on Tuesday. Stop by and see. So who knows if the store's even there. So he goes there and he goes to Avenue J and Ocean Avenue. And sure enough, the shoe store is still there. And he walks in and sure enough, he remembers, he's now very old, but the man who runs the shop is still there. So he says, sir, you won't even believe it, but I've had a suit for 40 years, and I was just going to give it to Goodwill, and I put it in the pocket, and I found the shoe repair bill for shoes I brought in before the war. I know I'm sure it's impossible, but is there any chance possibly the shoes could still be here? I love those shoes. My feet haven't changed in size. I'd love to have them. The fellow says, 40 years? I can't imagine. So he says, well, let me take the slip. He goes in the back. It takes 15, 20 minutes. He comes back. He says, I got good news and bad news. This is good news and bad news. What is this? The good news is the shoes are still here. So what's the bad news? They'll be ready on Tuesday. Anyway, so a little bit of humor there about, and now one final joke about people say about the kind of Jewish communication techniques. So President Obama sworn in, and he says, first order of business, I want to sneak in the Borough Park. There's the most religious neighborhood in America. I want no van, no motorcade. Just take one Secret Service officer with me. No one will know I'm there. I just want to go listen, if I can, quietly, in the street and hear what's going on. And if we do it this way, no one will have any clue. I'll just say I'm taking a little nap, and we'll just go for a couple hours. So they tell nobody, and he does all this, and Obama walks into a little store, a cobbler, a fellow mending shoes, and he says to the Secret Service guy, I don't want him to see my face, he might recognize me, so go say, vos dus, just like that. They tell me to say, vos dus, what's going on? So the Secret Service guy picked a Jewish one, so he'd fit in, walks over to the cobbler and goes, so what's new? What's dus? The cobbler says, I don't know, but I heard Obama's in Brooklyn somewhere, coming to Borough Park to visit. Anyway, that's a short version of the joke, a little bit about the Jewish communication technique. So a few stories to highlight different aspects of the Jewish community and traditional challenges and concerns. Hope you enjoy it.